Seema is a fantastic member of
We're going straight over to hear from Jeremy Corbyn now.
For her area. I also want to thank Andrew for inviting me here today. And he said that the speech you're doing relates totally to the core of what the Fabian Society is about, on fairness and justice in our society. And since the first hustings of the leadership campaign took place in this very room, I believe, in a very hot day in the summer, and a lot has changed since then, and I thank the Fabian Society for setting up the first hustings of the leadership campaign. Thank you very much for that. And also, thank you to the Fabian Society for, over a very long period of time, providing a space for debate, for openness, for opportunities to discuss different ideas and ways in which we can aspire to government in the future, but above all change the terms of public debate within our society. And that is something that has certainly happened over the last few weeks, and I want that change of the terms of debate to continue so that we do all aspire together for a different and better, more equal society with real opportunities for everybody, not just a few. That is absolutely the core of what I believe in and why I believe I was given this responsibility to lead the Labour Party, and that is what I intend to deliver. The absence of fairness and a wish for more of it is what drives us into political activity. We want a fair treatment for all, a fairer society, and a fairer world. Fairness is easy to claim but hard to deliver. David Cameron makes the argument that cuts, and there are huge cuts being made at the moment, are fair, and I've heard him say this so many times, because it's not fair to burden future generations with debt. Superficially, this is a very compelling argument. But I ask the question, how is cutting investment and opportunities for tomorrow's generation fair? It's absolutely not. It's deeply unfair. And today's young people are already paying that price. Think through this. The maintenance grant for university is being abolished. Our Shadow Chancellor, John McDonnell, showed our opposition to this by joining students in a demonstration against it. Nurses' bursaries are being cut, and Heidi Alexander, our Shadow Health Minister, was on the demonstration last week, showing our support for the nurses in their hour of need and their wish to become qualified nurses serving in our National Health Service and helping everyone in the community. Housing is becoming less affordable, whether you're a renter or a buyer, and there's a massive housing crisis in this country that is deeply unfair. The most needy, the poorest, the most vulnerable are hit the hardest, but it extends throughout our society. David Cameron is burdening today's young adults with more debt than ever through the university funding system and many other things, shackling them with a lifelong fetter on their ability to live independently, to rent or buy their own home, or even to start a family. They don't believe it's fair. But many people believe the economic crash means cuts have to be made. Again, not fair, but necessary. That is the argument. That is our failure. Our failure to offer a convincing alternative to people who already agreed with us that it isn't fair. How was it that we couldn't make a convincing case that fairness was necessary? And that is what we have to do. Investing in our future, investing in new infrastructure, industries and jobs is guaranteeing fairness. Investing in housing, new railways, new digital infrastructure creates jobs and creates a social and economic return. Cutting investment, as this government has done, cuts opportunity and cuts fairness. Fairness isn't just an abstract morality that we claim. It's something we together, as Labour, have delivered over decades in Britain. Labour governments only became possible, and we need to think about the history of this, when everyone had the vote, men and women, working class as well as the property class. It was the Labour movement, the trade unions, the suffragettes and our party that campaigned for that to happen. Universal suffrage is inherently fair, and we used its electoral force to create a fairer Britain. Like a former member of the Fabian Society, the late Tony Benn, said, democracy transferred power from the wallet to the ballot. What people couldn't afford for themselves, they could vote for instead. We're the party that created the institutions that have done so much to build a fairer and more equal society in Britain. We founded the National Health Service, established the safety net of social security under threat at the present time. We implemented, crucially, comprehensive education. We built council housing. We created the Open University. We instituted the Human Rights Act and the Equalities Act and the minimum wage. And we're the party founded by the trade unions and organisations that deliver fairness in the workplace. Anyone can wrap their policies in the language of fairness. Only Labour has delivered it through institutions and laws. Today, and we need to be proud of the achievements that we've made in so many areas. But today, Britain built by Labour, with its fairness inherently in it, is under attack. And we have to find new ways to institutionalise fairness into our society again. Now, the very basis on which we secured those victories, the vote, is under attack. Think about this very carefully. Having narrowly won the general election with only 24% of the electorate supporting them, the Tories are now trying to rig the system to keep themselves in power and to weaken the opposition inside and outside Parliament. Last year, they drove through a new voter registration scheme that will slash the number of young and inner-city voters. And later in this Parliament, they will cut the number of parliamentary seats. The Conservatives are gerrymandering the electoral system to benefit themselves. By directly attacking Labour's funding through the trade union bill and cutting the public short money support for opposition parties' research, they're deliberately setting out to constrain democratic accountability. And add to that the gagging law, which was passed in the last Parliament, which prevents charities, unions and think tanks from taking part in political debate nearer to election time, silencing those that may wish to present a public debate of a dissenting point of view. Their threats to use the BBC's charter renewal to hack away at its independence, the packing of the House of Lords with Tory peers, their moves to restrict the powers of local councils. It all adds up to a serious attack on democratic rights and freedoms. Theirs is the party funded by hedge funds, backed by press owned by multimillionaires and even billionaire tax avoidance. Their concept of fairness is a very different order to ours. Fairness for only a few is not fairness, but privilege. Hidden among the fake concerns of balancing the books is the same hoary old Tory ideology to shrink the state, to shrink fairness. Take an example. Look at the floods. Flood defence schemes up and down the country cut back because of a political ideology that says the state must be shrunk. I saw the consequences of this when I went to Leeds and York and Cumberland and many other places. I met the families who had lost their personal possessions. It's not just the big-ticket items that people lose in a flood they get upset by. Fridges and washing machines can be replaced. Photos, children's toys, family pets in homes that have now become the foul stench of sewage water polluted by those floods. I met too with the councils who told us about flood defence schemes cancelled and left unfunded. I met brilliant people in the Environment Agency who complained about the cuts to their staffing and their difficulties in delivering the service they want to deliver. I met with Fire and Rescue Service personnel whose numbers have been cut and who still don't have a statutory responsibility for floods that would mean they would have the necessary equipment and kit to better respond. These are serious issues of unfairness that reach into everybody's lives every day of the week. Just because the Tories are running the state into the ground, don't think it's our public services that are the problem. This is the same Tory strategy. They did it with the railways. Underfund it, make cuts, run the service down, then offer up privatisation as the solution. It's cynical, dishonest and unfair. It's not just... It's not just public services, though. They see only a limited role for the state because they want fairness limited too. Their laissez-faire attitude, for example, to the steel industry, could let a downturn become a death spiral in that sector, while other governments across Europe have acted to protect their industry. The Tories let ours close, let the jobs go, and are letting the communities suffer. It's not the Labour way. I raised the issue of the steel industry with the Prime Minister, raised it with the Chinese President and Chinese ministers and diplomats on the issues of steel dumping. We, the Labour Party, brought together the industry, unions, MPs and communities to try and find a solution. I visited Scunthorpe, a proud town producing steel. People who want to work and know how vital the industry is to their town's prosperity. They want to contribute to industrial growth and regeneration in Britain. It's the Tories that are letting that town be so brutally assaulted with the destruction of part of its steel industry. Look across Europe, and the support was there. In some cases,
we'll have more from Jeremy Corbyn in just a moment.
Protect it as a vital industry. They offered schemes to parties.
As you've been away, Mr Corbyn's just referred to supporting those in the camps at Calais and how more policy must be developed around that. Let's hear more what he's got to say to the Fabian Society.
By working together and by enshrining fairness through institutions and laws. This is about transforming our principles into practical policies. What Labour has done when it has been successful. It's guided by that practical fairness that Labour must move forward together. I want to set out some of the ideas under discussion that we're having at the present time. Policies to institutionalise fairness in Britain again. So, we are committed to a publicly owned railway that brings down fares and gets investment in a modern railway system, which would be governed not remotely by Whitehall, but by passengers, rail workers and local and national politicians. To democratic control of energy, not as an end in itself, but to bring down costs and to transition to carbon-free energy in the future. Do you know, for example, that half of German energy suppliers are owned by local authorities, communities and small businesses? There are now over 180 German towns and cities taking over their local electricity grids, selling themselves cleaner and cheaper electricity they increasingly produce for themselves. That's something we as Labour should want to emulate. The most innovative Labour councils are already starting to do so. Because I do see properly funded local government as an energy for change, an energy for growth and an energy for innovation at its very best. We also need to integrate health and social care, recognising if you cut social care, as this government has done and is doing, then it has a negative impact on the NHS, with fewer beds available, longer waits at the A&E department, and the unfairness of many people in desperate need being stuck in a hospital bed when they should be being cared for at home or somewhere else other than in a hospital. If we fund prevention fairly through an integrated strategy, we can save money in the long run without undermining fairness. Creating, for example, a lifelong education service so that opportunity is available all throughout our lives, recognising that in the modern era we need to be able to retrain and reskill our workforce as technology evolves and industry changes, and give everyone the opportunity for learning for itself, because that is what they want to do in adult education and so many other places. We were built as a movement valuing the opportunities for learning and education on the basis that everybody has ideas, everybody has imagination. They just need to be unlocked. This is in such sharp contrast to this government's unfair slashing of college funding and the adult education budget. We are going to continue to oppose them on that. Universal childcare is so important, so that we build on the great Labour legacy of Sure Start and the 15 hours free childcare that has supported so many young parents into work. and providing really high-quality childcare so that all children have the best start in life. Too often, inequality begins in the nursery. It should not begin in the nursery. Every child should have reasonable and equal opportunity to preschool education and preschool opportunities. That surely is something we can all agree upon. In workplaces too, we have to ensure that fairness is hardwired. Think of the scandal of Sports Direct that has totally shocked people. So as well as repealing the Tory Trade Union Act when it becomes law, we need a set of rights for all workers from day one to stop.
And that's where we'll leave Jeremy Corbyn for the moment. More coverage of that speech coming up at the top of the hour.